Good morning, neighbors. We're going to sing this song. It's based upon a famous Bible story that we'll read about in Genesis chapter 32 afterwards. When pangs of death seized o'er my soul, unto the Lord I cried, till Jesus came and he made me whole. I would not be denied. No, I would not be denied. No, I would not be denied, till Jesus came and he made me whole. I would not be denied. As Jacob in the days of old, I wrestled with the Lord, and instead with a courage bold, I stood upon his word, and I would not be denied. No, I would not be denied, till Jesus came and he made me whole. I would not be denied. Oh, Satan said my Lord was gone and would not hear my prayer. But praise the Lord, the work is done, and Christ the Lord is here. And I would not be denied. No, I would not be denied, till Jesus came and he made me whole. I would not be denied. I used to hear that song a lot growing up, and it always seemed to encourage and excite the people. And it was always one of my favorites when I was pretty young. The story, the true story, is found in Genesis chapter 32 and verse 24. It says, "Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him." So we realize this is not a natural man, that he could just touch. Yeah, it's like the song says, as Jacob in the days of old, he was wrestling with an angelic being, a spirit, but he's just taken on a form where Jacob could wrestle with him. But it's the point of this is really, when you read about this, Jacob wrestled, all night long. And in verse 26, and he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." And he said, "Why is it that you ask about my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And Jacob, he would have this testimony the rest of his life that he limped in this spot there where he was touched, and his joint, it was messed up, so he had to limp. But it was it's kind of a testimony, a remembrance. Look what happened. This is what you did. But the point of what we're trying to make when we sing this song was actually interesting. I just found out the same man who yesterday we were singing "Come Unto Me," today I would not be denied. Charles Jones, the same man, wrote both songs. But he takes and we as we apply this to our life. Jacob wrestled all night, until the day breaks, and God is in control of all these things. He's the one who allowed this angelic being to come down and wrestle to prove Jacob. Jacob is, he was the one who deceived his father to get the blessing, and would not give. He wanted the blessing so much he would not give Esau any food until Esau was willing to give him this blessing, this birthright. So Jacob, he's a determined individual. I want these things. I see that God's moving in it, and I desire these things. And so oftentimes, Charles Spurgeon, he would make this statement. A lot of times when we begin to pray, if we don't feel the presence of God or something, we almost want to give up. But he said, even more so, keep on pressing, because that's there's a wall there that God's wanting you to push through to receive this blessing or to receive an answer. Whatever, like Jesus said, whatever it is God's will ultimately, so thy will be done. But, I'm going to press until I find this answer, and I'm going to keep on asking, Lord, please, I need this. We need to take a page out of Jacob's story and say, you know what, I won't be denied. I'm going to keep on praying and pressing, Lord, until I will keep saying thy will be done. But Lord, this is my desire, and I'm going to keep on pressing through. Because Jacob, he could have just gave up really quick and said, you know what, I'm tired, I'm wrestling. Obviously by the morning he's dirty and sweaty. I've been wrestling all night. Not only that, my hip's thrown out of joint, and it will be out of joint till the end of his life. But it says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And then, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. We have to take that. So oftentimes we just kind of give up and say, well, it must not be God's will. Well, maybe he's trying to put this, a door there. It's like, get through the door. Let me see how desperate you are. But oftentimes it just, and sometimes the answer is no. But oftentimes the answer would be yes if we would just prevail and keep on pushing. Smith Wigglesworth was used greatly in this divine healing. And again, oftentimes it's almost like, dink, hey, I didn't get it. It's over, the end. But Smith Wigglesworth, he was called to go to this young woman's house, or young child. I don't know. I think she was a teenager, early teenager, maybe. But she was dying from tuberculosis. They said basically her lungs were like shreds. Just fleshy strips in her throat. So she comes home, or he goes to her home. It's very late or in the evening, and he goes in there and he said, "Well, I walk in and." And it's understandable, but I think the father had already died, so it's the mother and a son and her sisters, and so it's all her siblings are gathered around her bedside, and they're all just crying. And he realized, this is not a place where I can prevail, I can push through, because they've already wrote her off that she's going to die, because that's what the doctor, it's hopeless. It's really, she's just going to suffer and then die. So, he said, I recognized really quickly, like Jake, I'm not going to be able to prevail in an attitude of this. So he did very politely said, mother, speaking to the girl's mother, why don't you just go to bed? Oh, I could never leave her. I could never leave her side. And, because she's looking at her completely natural, but he's looking at, I got to prevail against these demonic spirits who are really fighting in this room of doubt and fear and all these things. He said, how can you wrestle when you're really being pulled back by everyone else? So then he asked this girl's brother and her sisters, well, why don't you all go to bed then? And we're going to stay with her until the end. And finally he just said, okay, well, I'm going to go home. And they said, you can't do that. They're grabbing hold of him. You can't do this. And he said, well, how can I do anything and really prevail when if I'm going to fight these spirits, then I got to fight all your doubts and fears. Why don't you just? So they said, we'll go to bed. And please just stay with her. So he began to pray. And he said, he prayed all night. But this is a girl who's dying, and who had this whole life in front of her. She's just a young girl. And, you could hear her ragged breath. And he said, I prayed and prayed and prayed. And I think it was sometime towards dawn. That's often, I heard a preacher, he said, hey, praying early in the morning. He said, that's a good time when it's quiet. And it seems like the devil's not on the prowl as much, because people are asleep. And he said, but you can come when it's just like the air's clear and you can really get in touch with God. And he said, but it just seemed like, he said, I believe, if I remember correctly, she died. It was just like, he could tell the breath was hardly, it was shallow anyhow. But he cried out, it's like, oh, Lord, I've done this all night. I just feel like you're here. You're going to do something, Lord. And he cries out. Suddenly, like, the girl takes a deep breath, and her family awoke in the morning with her playing the piano and singing. She was miraculously healed because this man took it upon himself. I'm going to wrestle with the Lord. I'm going to wrestle with all these doubts and fears, because God, remember, with Jacob, God was in control. God's the one who sent the angel. God was the one who did all these things. But he's testing us oftentimes. Are you going to prevail, or are you just going to give up and just say, well, God doesn't want it to happen? Well, maybe because it's something lacking in us. Like I said about Charles Spurgeon, famous Prince of Preachers, he said, when you feel like you're praying against a wall, like God's not hearing you, that's probably God saying, will you prevail? Will you push through? There's times, in the scripture where we read like King David, he got a no. Sometimes you'll get a no. I've had no's, but oftentimes I've had yeses. And sometimes I was like, maybe I've gotten some. Well, if you would have prevailed, again, all things are in God's control. But let us be a people who want to prevail and will not always would not be denied. Sometimes we're always denied, but he is a miraculous God. He's the same. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he wants something to happen in your life. So God bless you all, and hope to see you again.